Everyone. Today is National Dog Day, and it got me thinking to like all my favorite dog books, like Marley and Me and Old Yeller and countless others. But then I was thinking about this interview that I did last April with ALISON HODGSON, and she wrote a book called The Pug List, and it's a memoir. And you're looking at the cover right here, and it was such an amazing conversation, and I loved this book so much that I wanted to go buy a pug, but I didn't. But I wanted to really, really bad. I still want to buy a pug. They're so cute. But who doesn't love dogs? I mean, I am such a dog person, and I've had dogs most of my life, and I was like, I got to celebrate today. So anyway, I am going to post the video right here, and you can listen to her again, and it was awesome. And go read the book. I'm going to have the link listed below to the Amazon, so you can go hit it and go buy it. I love her. She's amazing. So everyone, here is Allison.
Hi, everyone. Today I have with me author Alison Hodgson. Hi, Alison. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Hi, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Alison wrote the book called The Pug List. And on the front cover, which you'll be able to see on this video, is the most adorable looking pug I've ever seen. And I showed my son. I have a 14-year-old son who wants a pug. So before we even start with the book, okay, like I got my 17-year-old son a dog last year, right, a mini golden doodle, okay? And my 14-year-old was like, I want a pug. And I'm like, oh, my God, I'm not training two dogs at the same time. Like, I'm sorry, just one at a time. Well, I thought maybe he'd forget about it, but he hasn't. Okay.
No.
I was reading your book. I was like, what is it about the pugs that nobody so I showed this to him last night. He was like, oh, am I getting a pug? I'm like, oh, gosh. Now my other dog's 1 year old, and he's really trained, and I was like, I'm going to ask her. I'll ask her what she thinks, and then we'll discuss it again.
Oh, no, that's some pressure. Although I'll warn you, the book is pretty much the plans to the submarine / how to get a pug. But
yes.
But the backstory, the work, like not everybody gets, what my daughter had. So you might be safe. But it is the plans to the submarine.
I thought what was really good about your research, because as I'm reading your book, I was like, oh, so it is better to get to rescue a pug because then they're more trained than getting a brand new puppy pug, which.
Well, I always recommend rescue. I think rescue is so great and such an important thing. And we have two pugs now, and they're both former puppy mill.
I saw the picture on Facebook.
Yes, our little cat. But some people do puppies, and it's not that straightforward. And I do genuinely believe it's finding the right family, the right dog with the right family. And our first dog was a lab, and we got him as a puppy. He was not a rescue. But I'm a huge proponent of rescue, and there's so many great pug rescues all over the country, and they really work with you, and it's so gratifying. And it can be, you can sidestep a lot of the challenges of training a puppy, and with the pug there are some unique challenges there. So.
Right, and my golden doodle, he's a mini golden doodle. I mean, he was amazing, like almost too easy, because I've had other dogs, and I looked at him sometimes like, seriously, you're already trained? Like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you trained already?
You would probably not do that with a pug. That's the short answer there. You would
right,
probably not with a pug puppy. You wouldn't. But there's so many compensations. They're just they're a delightful breed.
Oh, and they're just, when he was, giving me the pitch for the pug, a couple months ago, he said, but because he's like a computer geek. He plays computer games all the time, right? And he's like, but Mom, a pug is perfect for me because it will just sit on my lap and just love me, and it won't require me to do a lot. And it's just going to, I hear they get really attached to their person. And then when I was reading your book, I was like, well, he's kind of right about that, isn't he?
He is, absolutely, absolutely.
So anyway, it was very interesting, the conversation. So I was really happy to read your research, and we'll see where it goes from there. But anyway, I want to talk about your book and about your story, and just so everybody, kind of a little background. You had a house burned down, and you went through the process of of everybody's nightmare in the middle of the night, waking up to your alarm going off, and it's not just for no reason, like some of us do. Our alarm goes off, and we end up calling the people and telling them to shut it off, and there's nothing, there's nothing going on. And I have I'm a mom of 6 children, and I cannot imagine. I cannot, I read your book straight through. I sat down, and then I didn't get up until I was done. I couldn't get up from it. And I'm so happy you wrote a book about it, because I think it gives everybody so hope, even if it wasn't about that in their lives, because for me it wasn't about that. But your story just resonated with me as a mom.
Yeah, I think the best memoirs open up someone's unique and personal story. But the point every memoir writer ought to have is to open up their story for so many more people. And there's always the heart of the story, and the heart of it with us was grief and loss, and something I wouldn't wish any house fire on anyone, but something that was unique about ours is that it was arson, and so it was a crime was committed in addition to the traumatic experience. And so what I really hoped, even before the fire, I had learned so much about the importance of the grieving process, of mourning. And so writing the Pug List, my wish was that it would create a space for people to recognize griefs and sorrows that they had never mourned, and maybe invite them to do that and help them to see how to do that. But then I wanted also to tell an engaging story. And so when you say you read it in one sitting, I worked really hard to make that possible. And there's a lot of humor. I mean, there's a lot of sorrow, but there's a lot. You write about a pug. There's going to be some silliness and laughter.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. The best memoirs to me are. Let me see how long this book is. Almost 200 and some pages, and not that thicker books, don't have some kind of an appeal, but I really love just sitting down and reading it straight through. I really do. And the shorter books, you can do that, and you got the whole story. I don't think you left anything unsaid. I wasn't, waiting, thinking at the end, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened here. I mean, you laid it all out so that everybody could experience. I felt like I was experiencing what you were experiencing. And yesterday, I have only 2 sons left at home, and my one son was, complaining about something, and I just got done with your book. I'm making dinner, and he's complaining, and I'm like, you know what really went wrong with your day today? What are you complaining about again? Okay, good. I'm just making sure that, your day was fairly good then, right? No tragedies. And it does. It puts everything into perspective. It really does.
And not that you want to minimize things, because every day is full. And that was my whole point, was that not everybody's going to have their house burned down or other, really obvious disasters, but every single person has pain and disappointment and loss and grief. And it's just some of us tend to magnify that and focus on that. But then there is quite a bit that we all tend to minimize and just dismiss and say, well, in the whole scheme of things, and like my aunt just had cancer, and it was in the context of cancer, it was a best case scenario. She still had cancer and surgery, and you know what I mean? It's still nobody wants, but you want to hope. We need to hope. And we don't want to dismiss the sorrows. It's living with both. That was really my point with the book.
Yes. Yes. And I did have a house that was broken into. It was in the middle of the day. I'd gone to like Michael's with the kids, came back, and I let the dog in. This is another dog that I had. And he went right for the it's like he knew. He went right for the window because I had left him outside in his pen. Brought him in. He went right for the window. I don't even know that I would have noticed. It would have taken me a long time to notice. But the window was open, and they had taken a bunch of computers, bunch of laptops of my children. And that feeling, when I was reading your book, I was like, yeah, because if it would have been about you, like if it would have been something that you guys did, an accident, something, it's almost like you can wrap your brain around that. But the intrusion part that I didn't know, and the kids went through a little bit of stuff. I mean, like I said, it was the middle of the day, so it wasn't bad. We weren't home. But it still was like invasive. It's still like
it's still a violation.
Somebody came into my house and took my children's laptops and left people in a trip to Michael's. So somebody's watching. And that's how you felt, like somebody's watching, somebody's somewhere, Yeah. And I was in the middle of a city. I wasn't even out in the middle of nowhere. It was crazy. And, and I was thinking about what you went through, and I was like, that's what you have a hard time wrapping your brain around, is that somebody was there. Somebody was in your garage. Somebody was planning something, destructive to your family. That's just, it's inconceivable.
Yeah, because it wasn't personal. It was random. He didn't know us. And on one level, in the beginning, and because we were busy with insurance and rebuilding, we kind of, I'll say for myself, the arsonist himself really wasn't a focus. And but when we moved back into the new house, that's when, somebody set this fire. Like, our house didn't burn down. Someone set our house on fire. And then that's when that really landed, coming home but not coming home, and realizing I don't feel safe in my own home. And I'd always struggled with fear, and then ironically it was in the house that got set on fire that I really came to a place of peace and was really freed from this constant anxiety. And then that house got set on fire. It's like, seriously? No. So I definitely, to this day, I feel a real sensitivity about the boundaries of our home, but it's not, it's gotten better. It's definitely gotten better. But it was something we had to deal with that you can't anticipate. That's the thing about any personal tragedy. On the front end, you don't know exactly what it is until you live it and deal with it. And you might be fine in the beginning. You might genuinely be fine in the beginning, and it's living it out. But you don't know what tomorrow holds.
Right. And, I loved how vulnerable you were in writing about the days right after. Because if anybody, if anybody's ever, and everybody has, to say everybody has their thing. Yeah, but it really reminded me, because I was, thinking, did I ever feel that way? And I was like, you know what, after my mom died, even though my mom died of cancer and I knew she was going to die, it wasn't. But those days after she actually died and I wasn't going to the hospital, I just paced. And I knew what to do. And I didn't, and my brain, and I'm still mothering, I'm still cooking, I'm still doing mothering things, but I wasn't there. I wasn't present, and I can only imagine that's, to the nth degree, you were doing things, you were accomplishing things, but present as in, being there actually, yours is probably the most out-of-body experience you could possibly have, just walking through.
If I had $1 for every time I used the word surreal, we wouldn't have needed insurance, because I just could have self-funded our rebuild, because it was just beyond reality. It's like anyone I've heard it, a house fire is just one of those things, when you lose everything. It's just such I can't believe that happened, you can't comprehend it. And then the fact that it was arson, and we live in a nice little suburb, we live in a place where you can leave your bikes out, and and I would say in general, like this is, very uncommon, and it happened to us, so
it is
it's
uncommon.
unbelievable.
I mean, it is uncommon.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and it's so uncommon that you say it and people are like, what? Like, but on the other hand, I love how you put, when people talk about house fires, because first of all, our kids are meant to talk about it in school, and I'm a homeschooling mom, so every year I have to do this fire plan thing. They make me. The state of Pennsylvania makes me do that to submit with their homeschooling. It is great.
It's good.
But in your head, you're going, you know what? This doesn't mean anything. Nothing means anything to me. This doesn't mean, it's just stuff. It's just stuff in a house. That's all this is, right?
Yep.
But I love when you realized when you went after that page in the book and you were like, it was just stuff. You lived the reality of that. Like, it is just stuff. But it isn't just, it's as much as it is just stuff, it's your stuff. It's like,
it's not the stuff, and it's a loss. And in the beginning, I think, I again, going back to what I really hoped for the book is we only make room for grieving. There's death, and we make these hierarchies of loss, and that's a good thing. Like when my dad died, forgive me, but I didn't want to hear about your great uncle who died or your grandparents,
right?
Or you know what I mean? Like, and if you haven't lost a parent, unless your grandparents raised you, or don't tell me, and I love my dogs, don't tell me about the death of your dog. Even though,
right.
And it's just, number one, when somebody else is grieving, just carry your own empathy to them. Don't talk to them about your loss. Just say, I'm so sorry, and I've lost someone too, and you just don't bring your stories to someone else's, funeral, essentially. Other than if it's a good story about the person. But anyway, all that to say, we tend to have this hierarchy. And so in the beginning, I truly felt, okay, this is just stuff. And because of all the other things we'd been through, I genuinely thought, wow, this is lower echelon. And in the early days, I told people, we've been through worse. And then certain people who I knew had suffered profound sorrows. I said, you've been through the worst. Like, this isn't the worst thing that's happened to me. Well, It was the early days. It's like asking somebody who just got married, like they're walking to the reception and you ask them for tips on marriage. It's like they're not the ones to ask, and we tend to check in with people right after disaster has befallen them, and like, how are you doing? It's like, guess what? They don't know. Like, ask them in a month, ask them in 6 months, ask them in 18 months, 2 years. You know what I mean? Like they don't even know. And so with losing my stuff, it was like, oh, it's just things. We're going to be fine, And guess what? 99% of that is true. And our things can bring a hominess. Our things, like, I'm so sad to have lost my kids' writings, my kids' art, and I write about in the book how I had this realization that my kids are past the age. Like, nobody thinks I'm world's best mom. Everybody knows.
I'm not getting world's best mom person anymore.
Nobody knows. Like, even, like, they love me, and I grieved over that. And I even say in the book that in my, I can't remember how big our house was, but thousands of square feet, what I've actually mourned, what I've grieved over would fit in a single, in a front closet, our little front closet.
Right.
It's just, it really is true, but that doesn't mean what we did lost. But the things that we really lost were my kids lost the sense of invincibility and their sense of safety and their belief that the world is good, which guess what? They were going to learn that anyway. But I don't think my 7-year-old needed to know, that people burn other people's houses down. Like, she didn't need to know that yet. She would learn that eventually. So a lot of what we lost was intangible.
And it's true, especially when, and I have the younger child, I have because of having 6, I have age differences, and I was thinking the same thing. It's like you protect that age. You want that age to stay innocent until it doesn't have to be innocent, you know.
Yeah.
And but then that isn't our, you know, like we think that's our plan anyway. That's not, you know, that's what we think is necessary. But obviously there's other things going on, you know, in what she needed to know and what's going to benefit her, you know.
Exactly. And I am a true believer in as much, and there are ways that my kids have gotten hurt through this that I can't fix, and it's profound, and it's caused a lot of pain. And I'm willing to hold both. I'm never going to try and say, well, but, you know, and this makes something good. I think the healthiest way to live is to hold both. The reality that my kids got hurt in profound ways because of this, and my kids are incredibly resilient, have their priorities straight, and are not attached to things. And that was one of my prayers afterwards. I knew that it could go either way. They could either be super attached to stuff, or they could be healthfully detached and just have it in appropriate order. And they do, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, and I was thinking when I was reading it, at a certain point in my head, I'm thinking, you know, I wonder if anybody said to her along the way, oh, well, this is going to be such a blessing in disguise because you're going to get a new house, and it's going to be so much better than the old house. And then you said that.
Times.
And then, you know,
times.
and then like a couple of chapters later, you address the fact that so many people said, because I can hear it. I can hear people saying that, you know, like,
but at least you get a new house.
Right. Everything is going to be so much better. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just different. It doesn't have to be better, you know, necessarily. But it can be okay. But it doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, well, God allowed the house to be burned down so we can get this big, beautiful new house that, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be that, you know.
I think it's our compulsion to make things okay. And to, if at least you have a new house, then that person can move on, you know. And
right.
And no, and it's just one of those things that a lot of people don't have imagination, and the more suffering you experience in your life, it's an education, and your imagination expands, and a lot of people don't, and so they can just see what's concrete, what's right in front of them, and what was right in front of a lot of people was this gleaming, new, beautiful, much nicer house, you know, and it's so easy.
I know, it was just so funny that I thought that, and then I read, and I was like, oh, okay, good, they were saying that, because I could only imagine the people that would have been saying that to me, you know, that would be their comforting statement, you know.
Well,
but,
when my dad was near death, he did die, but he was in the hospital. He had several episodes before he eventually died, and like at one point the doctors used the word miracle to describe his recovery, and when we were hoping that he was going to make it, I just said, I just didn't even have the strength for a funeral, which sounds so weird, but which I had to summon it eventually. But I said, I swear, if somebody tells me he's in a better place, I'm going to punch him. I'm just going to punch him, you know? And I actually prayed. I was like, God, protect me from stupid people with good intentions. Because you can have nice people. I have been a stupid person with good intentions, you know? And so often we don't know what to say, and we start with the mistake that we need to say something, and most of the time we don't. We just, you know, show up, do something practical and helpful, and be kind. You know, you can emanate kindness, and people can get that. And that's my various disasters have been an education. I'm grateful.
And I was thinking, at least, like, I have a tendency, when my mom died, I didn't leave the house. Like, I was afraid of talking to people. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't, you went out there way more. Like, you were out. I don't know if anybody was.
I had to drive my kids. Like, I live like a troll on a daily basis. Like, my healthy day-to-day life is pretty much being a troll. But I had to take my kids to school, and I had to go to their school, and and also, I mean, like, a lot of it was we're literally standing in front of our house. Like, we'd have to go back to the house to meet with people, and strangers would stop. We've never met them before, and again, so many, like, honestly, like 90% of the people, kind, and 10% were just a pain in the neck, and but even the kind people, it's just too hard.
It's just too hard to deal with.
You're just so fragile and exhausted, and that's the tricky thing, with supporting people in crisis is everybody's so different, and something that would energize someone else would be a drain, and so that's what requires a lot of thought and sensitivity, and then the reality that sometimes we mess up and we're trying to do the best thing and we still miss the mark, and that's being a human.
Right. And that's what I loved about it. Like I said, as a mom, like how you're dealing with each one of your children, and you're being so vulnerable with them. And it had me like going back in my head, like, I don't know that I said some of the things that you said at different parts in their lives, just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, that's the reality. And I still don't. And I have 6 children, and somebody says, how do you do that? I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. Every one of them is different. Being a mother to every one of them is different. And, you got that. You got that. I didn't know. It took me a while to know I didn't know. But you understand.
It's this weird thing about life is it's not conscious, but we just have this sense we're behind, like nobody has a child. Most people, some do, some I think really healthy and gracious, self-gracious people, but I think most of us are born thinking we're behind and everybody else has it figured out, but we're the only ones who missed the memo or didn't get the book, and so there's this sense, and then I think some people do a better job faking it, but because I think the problem is the belief that instead of we're here to learn, we're here to serve each other and love each other, it's I ought to have it all figured out. And I actually said to myself, and I think I said it as the house was in flames. Like, I think I said it to the Hope, my daughter's friend, who, God bless her, was having a sleepover, and I said, this is our first fire. And you know what? I lost that. Like, in the beginning, I knew I don't know what I'm doing, and then I lost it, and I did, and shame myself, like, and there was this sense that I was failing our fire, because it started out so well, Michelle. Our fire started out so well. But you know what? This, in the shock and in the genuine reality of having it all clear, that my family was alive and that was my come from, and then, things wear on and you get weary. And so, oh man, yeah.
And I can imagine the people that said that to you too. But your family is fine. Aren't you so happy? Yes, of course I'm happy that of course I am. Like, that does not mean any, it's like, of course I am. Like that, of course. Like, why are you even saying that to me? Of course I'm happy about that,
I do. The fire really was like a master class on mourning because no one died, and because at the end of the day it was money and stuff, and trauma was involved, and you know what I mean? Like, it was just such a textbook, at least you got a new house, at least like it was such a textbook of, it worked out, and then also, it was so public. It's such a strange thing. And then the other thing is, with a fire, it's so many people's personal nightmares, like something that it's an elemental fear, literally. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
something
Mm-hmm.
that some people, they're so afraid of. It didn't happen to be mine, and I had one. You know, so so many people projected their own worries and fears onto our situation, and it caused them to empathize and be so generous to us, but it also was strange to have something so public. And where we happen to live, a lot of people drive by our house, and so everybody knew about our fire. And to this day, like Eden will we'll meet a friend and get a ride home, and they'll pull up, and there's this moment where they say, "Oh, did you know this house had a fire?" And she says, "I did." You know, and, "Did you live here?" "Yes, I did." You know, and since the book, a little bit, you know, it's more people, know about it, but it was a very public thing in our community, and so it's really given me an empathy. I've shifted the way I just tend to make visceral judgments, and the way I call out public events. You know, like when even just recently, the man who his kids busted into his interview, you know, on the BBC, and the whole world was talking about it. You know, and I just find I don't tend to comment public, you know, on Facebook or social media about other people, because it's like you never know their story behind the story. You know, we only know what we can see. It's just really given me empathy for what it's like to be the focus. And that's like wasn't on a national or international stage. It was just in our little community. And it's painful and hard to have your personal sorrow be a public event.
Right. And I'm sure it was so difficult when people would say, "How are you?" And you want to be like, "I'm not good." Okay? Like, yeah. I'm okay. Just minutes. But on the whole, I've got to talk to insurance people today, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that, and I've got children, that I've got to tend to. And so I'm really at my, like you must have felt like, I'm at, because that's the first question people are going to say, but you can't, you're like, "I'm good. I'm fine. I'm okay." But inside you're like, "Please do not ask me that question. Please do not ask me how I'm doing today." Because, you just don't want to be as honest as you want to be,
Well, I like to be authentic. Like once I had a friend at church ask me how I was doing, and I said, "Well, I didn't verbally abuse the children today." And she started laughing, and she said, "Thank you so much." And I think when we're honest with each other, it can be a gift, but then it can also be, Oh, I was just throwing out a social pleasantry, Allison. And so what I learned to do in those circumstances was I actually worked with my therapist for a response, because I said, and I can't remember it offhand. I think I wrote about it in the book. I'm not sure, but I said something like, it's been hard. It's been long. We're struggling. I can't remember. I worked through this very one-sentence response, and then I would say, this was always the money answer, "But how are you?" And you know what? People love to talk about themselves. And 9 times out of 10, as soon as I asked, "But how are you?" boom, it was done. And so, I crafted my little honest response, 1 sentence, 10 seconds, and then, "How are you? How are you guys doing? What's going on with you guys?" And that really helped me, because it can be when you're in a crisis, you could just get so self-absorbed, and I tilt that way anyway. And so it's like I can blather on about myself all day, So it's like other people have trials, other people are going through things, and it was good for everybody involved. And like I said, people like to talk about themselves, and so it was astonishing how quickly people would. Boom, our topic
pick up on it.
Yeah.
Right. So how was writing, okay, so then when you went through it, and you wrote the book fairly soon. It wasn't, there wasn't a huge gap of time. And how was that? Was that very helpful in dealing with what your feelings and well, first of all, it's fresh in your mind, so you are so specific on some of the things. I'm like, wow, I don't even know how I could have remembered what you remembered.
Well,
but
some of the things I wrote as I went, like the morning after the fire, I got up at 4 a.m. and I woke up, which I tend to wake up at 4 a.m,
mm-hmm.
and I wrote down the moment of waking up to when my husband and I started to go up to the second story, and then I was stuck there for months and months. So I did some writing in the first year afterwards, not everything, but I mean, essentially, I took some notes because I knew I would write about it eventually. I was working on a book before the fire, and so I wanted, and then just for our sake, there were some things I wanted to record. So some things I wrote at the time, some things I wrote a year later. And then when I went to write the book, I got the contract 4 years after the fire. And then it was, I mean, I wanted it to be compelling, and I really wanted to pull people into the story and make it very readable. And so it wasn't cathartic for me. It was hard work. And I was really concerned about it getting boggy in the middle, and I was really sad and struggling and angry, so I was, and there are things I left out of the story, and so there were so many things, and so I was actually worried that the reader wouldn't be sympathetic, that I would, because I wanted to be honest, I wanted to show just that I wasn't sweet, lovable fire victim lady, and but then it's like this line where it's like, I don't want to lose the reader, I want to be honest, but I don't want to lose them, so there were some things I left out, like I said, and so I said to my editor, I said, do I have them with somebody set my house on fire? And she's like, you have them. Like, you don't have to share all the other peripheral crappy things that happened, because just for, it's like, it's interesting because when you tell your story, for me, always what I leave out is as important as what I write.
And that's, that is true. I mean, I have read memoirs where, halfway through you're like, okay, I get it. I get that you went through this horrible thing, but what else? And I think that the pug, like making the focus on kind of like what your family was going through with the dog, cleared up that what else?
Yeah.
Because it was like, okay, we're dealing with this. That's horrible. Insurance people are horrible. Rebuilding. I mean, you didn't even go into the process of how horrible rebuilding is. I mean, building a house is horrible on any level, but I can't imagine rebuilding a house, would be so much more difficult. But you didn't bog it down with that, and instead you chose to focus on, okay, my youngest daughter, this is what she's going through. And it was so incredibly sweet and pure, and, so you get so wrapped up in what she's going through. And reading her writings, I was like, oh
could
my
you
gosh.
take it? I know.
No, I couldn't take it. I was like, okay, so if this happened to me, like you could, she was so, and then her childlike way of, I'm so happy. I didn't even get the dog yet, but I'm so happy that I'm saving for my dog. Like, how, like, you want to say, like, she, in her innocence, actually got it. Yeah. Like, she actually got how to do that before she even knew what she was doing consciously.
Well, happiness experts say so much of our pleasure in an experience is the anticipation of it. And since then, since I've learned that and then looked back and seen it in my own life, I realized I don't do a lot of surprises anymore, because unless the surprise is then you get to anticipate it, because anticipation is so much of the part of our pleasurable experiences. And so for her, working and earning for him and just the possibility of having him was, when she writes, it's worth it, W-O-T-H-E, but she sacrificed and she worked hard. And I do think we tend to appreciate the things that when we have skin in the game, and it was, for me, one of the interesting things was you know, I didn't know that I'd be writing a book. You know, I knew I'd write about it someday, but I didn't necessarily think I'd get a book because, you know, platform is really important. And, you know, and so if someone had said, you know, book deal, Allison, get the pug, you know, it's going to be a book deal, you know. But so I was resisting, you know, I wanted to write a book someday. I've been working on a book, you know, and so I'm resisting. Number one, I'm resisting the means of great healing to my child and us. I would say God used that little dog to bring such healing to our entire family. And then I got to write about it, you know, and so it's so funny how sometimes it's such a picture of, as the life coaches say, our life, how sometimes we resist the very thing we need because we don't want the inconvenience or the work, and we don't always understand what the great gift that we're withholding from ourselves, and that was the case with Oliver.
Yeah, and, you know, that I think that just made the whole book, and it's, you know, it's what we do. It's what we do. We get these little things, and we're able to, as families, get through the difficult things. And I mean, that's just, and I thought that it ended the book so well that I was like, it was, you know, she got it, and you can see how she was dealing with it, and it was like, oh, look at her. Like, it was just so amazing. It was so amazing. And,
go ahead. Sorry.
No,
sorry.
that's okay.
Well, when I had the idea for the book, one of the things, you know, I like memoir, and I read a lot of memoirs, and I just read a memoir by someone, a very gifted writer, and but the subjects of his memoir weren't very interesting, and through no fault of his own, you know, and so he's this great writer, he's having wonderful things to say, but the actual people in the book were just a little dull. And so when I thought about writing the story, there were two things. But my first thought was, I've got great characters, you know, like I love my family, but just being objective, they're funny and they're smart and there's some quirkiness there, and I'm not making any of that up, you know, just writing my kids as characters. They're very interesting characters. Well, but then the other side of that is my children are characters in my book. So that was, I had to really navigate that, you know, because I number one, just writing about them, I had to really think through the ramifications and the ethical questions about whether or not I should write about them, and because that was something I thought through. I didn't just assume, well, it's my story. And even just as a writer, if I tell the story, my daughter Lydia is also a writer, and it's like, well, if I write the story, not that she can't, but it's different, you know? And so,
oh, definitely, yeah.
And so I asked permission, and they all agreed, and then I was very careful because, you know, I wanted to write honestly, and so I wrote. I was careful about, in the editing, I was very careful, and then every single one of them I made, you know, the older two were happy to read the whole book, and Eden, I made her read every page that she was on, and it was silly. She was fine with everything except little silly things, like when in the beginning she's the one who woke me up the morning of the fire, and before the alarms went off, and she crawled into bed because she'd had a nightmare, and I said she fell back asleep. Well, she's like, Mom, I was awake. Well, okay. So I turned it and I said, you know, she got in and she felt, you know, she was almost asleep, you know, half asleep or something. And that met her, you know, sensibilities, you know, and it's like, guess what? I know she was asleep, but she knows she was awake. So I'm going to honor her. And I was just really thankful. It was something so easy and something so manageable, you know, but so it was the double-edged sword of, I have these amazing characters. My children are amazing characters. My children are my characters. You know, so it took some navigation. And my husband, you know, I had him read through everything, and just that was really important to me, to tell our story honestly, and to be to honor my family, to honor everyone I wrote about.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm giving a spoiler to the end, because I went on your Facebook page and I see that you have told people, about the accident afterwards. But I have to tell you that when I got to that, I was like, oh, what? Like,
I know.
No.
I know.
But then again, that is life. Like, it's not like, okay, so we had a fire, so nothing bad, quote unquote,
we're done. We're done.
ever going to happen to us again. We're good, and this is it. Like, we survived this one thing, so that means from now on we don't have to ever deal with anything again. Like, that's not life. It's just not, and it's just, of course everybody reads that and goes like, oh my gosh, no way.
Seriously.
But it's just not the way it is, And
it's for people who haven't read the book, we were involved in a terrible car accident, and we landed upside down on the middle of a highway. Unfortunately, we all lived, and I don't really go into it in the book because, again, like, what you leave out, and so I needed to reference it. So I think I like, it's a paragraph or two that I, like, really rapid fire, give you the boom, boom, boom. Basically, we could have died. We're rushed to 2 different hospitals and 5 different ambulances, which, if you think that worked for me, going to a different hospital than my kids, it did.
No.
It did not, but what's so interesting is, after the fire, I took my kids through there was this season where there were a bunch of disaster movies. Like, I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's kind of an allegory. It's the tiger, where there's the shipwreck, and there's the boy is on a Life of Pi. I took him to Life of Pi.
Yes.
And then I took him to the Impossible, and then finally he was like, enough, Mom, no more disaster movies. Because I wanted, like, to subtly say, hey, we're not the only ones who, like, hard, weird things befall other people. Well,
right.
In the Impossible, the son goes and helps people in the hospital, and in our hospital, my husband and I were tied to boards. We got released at the very end, and my older daughter Lydia was released, and she went right to Eden, and stayed with Eden, and Eden had to have stitches, and neither my husband and I were there for everything. I wasn't there at all, and my husband was there at the tail end, but Lydia went, and took care of her little sister. And other people heard, and they're like, it would be, she's still a child, like, why didn't she come to you guys? Like, she would seek comfort. And she said, so sweet, she said, well, I knew you and Dad were fine, and I knew Eden needed me. And we're all like, oh, honey, like, everybody's thinking, why didn't you go to us for reassurance? But she rose up, and I think that's part of the resilience and the strength she had from what we went through after the fire. Her first thought was, who needs help? And it was her little sister. And so, in the book, I just barely touch on that. But I was thinking seriously. And a lot of people did. And it was almost embarrassing. I didn't really want to tell people because, number one, I had a concussion. I had a brain injury, so I wasn't thinking straight anyway. But It was almost like, oh my gosh, we're those people now. Like, and one friend said, I don't know if you're the luckiest people in the world, if you guys have the worst luck or the best luck, And then, when Oliver got sick, that's when I was just like, no, are you kidding me? But that's really the point of my book, is it's not like you get a dance card at a ball and, okay, I'm filled up. I've danced every dance. I get to sit and, sit punch now. And
right.
It's like, no, bad things still happen, and it's how we respond, and you can either be scared and pull back from life, and sometimes you do, you do both. Sometimes you keep going, and or sometimes you pull back and say, you know what, I just kind of want to hide under the covers for a
Just
day.
just for a little bit. I was interviewing a woman yesterday, and she's written some brilliant memoirs, and she's 75 now. And I said to her, what's next? And she said, oh, God, every time something tragic happens in my life, I get a best-selling book. So I'm not wishing for any more best-selling books.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Actually, her name just filled it because I have like 4 interviews today. But anyway, so yeah, she's just amazing. And here's her book, Abigail Thomas.
Yeah, I knew it was.
Yeah,
I've read her. Yeah.
But it was she was amazing. I'm talking to her, and she just last week had a car accident that she got a concussion. Her car flipped, and she got a concussion. And as she's talking to me, she's saying, so if I don't make sense, don't worry about it. I have a concussion, everybody. Don't worry, And it was so cute, but she's 75, and she's like, yeah, I've been through this and that, but whatever, so I don't even care anymore. I have a great age. And I was like, I love that interview because that is, when we get to 75, we get a little bit, I'm only 52, we get a little bit of perspective on everything. Yeah. And then everything becomes the story, and everything is, it just takes time. But not to take away what we're doing in it, because that is what we're doing in it, and that's important too. But absolutely. I love her perspective of being 75 and having a concussion like last week, but doing an interview with me on that day. She's like, well,
that again goes to, you have these windows sometimes after hard times where you're doing better than in 3 months or the next week, or you know what I mean? Like sometimes in the early days after an event, you are functioning better than, it's just like a race, like at mile 2, talk to me at mile 15,
Right, exactly.
Like, talk to me 20 feet from the or like, I don't know, I'm not an actual runner, so I don't know. I think 20 feet, you get that, like, 18th wind, but a little, like a mile, 25 miles, whatever.
Well, I just want to thank you so much. I knew that we'd have so much, like I said, I started off with a blank page because I was like, I don't need notes for this. I read your book. I know you. I don't even need notes. So it was a great interview. Thank you so much. And everybody, the book is called The Pug List, and it is amazing. You'll see the picture of it. You'll have the link. And it's so heartwarming, and it's good for moms. I can only say for moms because I'm a mom, but I loved it, and I'm so happy you wrote it. It was a great book. So anyway, are you working on anything else at the moment?
I'm yes. The shortest answer is yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, keep us posted, please, because I'd love to talk to you again, and you always have an invitation to come on. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, you have a great day. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Made it this far, you listened to my whole talk with Alison, and it was long, but I loved her so much. And like I said, I'm going to have that listed below, the link to where to buy the Pug List. And if you like this video, hit like, and I'm going to be doing a lot more of these to celebrate these national days and topics, and just to re-listen to a lot of the videos that I've already posted. So anyway, please hit like, please subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I post videos every single day. Have a great Sunday, everyone.